All right, I'm here with the one and only Maggie Humphrey, the director of e-commerce here at Cypress North. And Maggie, you have many hats that you wear. E-commerce, leader, training, and also a detective because in your Google Ads accounts recently, this past week, you had seen a new tab appear that some people missed, but not you, and it's the missed growth opportunities tab. And Maggie, can you explain a little bit more as to what this does?
Yeah, this was a really, really great find. I have to give a shout out to our team member, Callie Kessler here. She was the one that first put eyes on it and sent it to me immediately and said, "Hey, have you seen this before?" So we jumped in and investigated. And I think it has there's some good timing with that coming out in Q4 right ahead of the holiday season. I think it can be very helpful in pre-planning for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. But essentially, it's a bar chart that shows potential clicks, conversions, conversion value daily that you could have reached if you were to adjust your bids and budget. So, like the keyword there is definitely potential. It's a great way to spend more on Google, if you will. We know that that's always Google's bottom line, but it could essentially give you a little bit of window into the opportunity that you could be missing in the SERP. So, what's really cool about this bar chart is it actually breaks down your actual the actual performance that you had that day in terms of clicks, conversions, conversion value, and then it also shows the potential what you missed and it quantifies it for you. So it doesn't give you an exact, hey, this is how much you need to spend more, which would be very helpful, but it does give you campaign level recommendations broken out below. So you have that bar chart at the top that shows you that performance day over day. And then further down, we have a campaign breakdown and it pulls in search campaigns, standard shopping, and performance max. So anything that's in the search network. And you can actually see recommendations by campaign that Google's providing you. And those recommendations tend to be either increasing your budget or decreasing your targets. Of course, I have not seen a recommendation yet about decreasing budget or increasing targets. So
Shocking.
yeah, detectives are out on that one. I don't know if we'll see one of those anytime soon, but you do have that campaign level insight, which is nice. And I did notice there are quite a few campaigns that don't have any recommendations at all, which I don't know if that's a good sign. Maybe there's not enough data there yet, but you do have to scroll through and it's not all in one view. It doesn't filter up to every campaign with a recommendation. You have to kind of take out your magnifying glass there a little bit, scroll through, find the campaigns in your list that have those recommendations and filter through those.
It sounds like you might just be showing off a little bit. Your campaigns are that pristine that they don't have that many notes. But I think the one thing I like in that chart is the fact that, you, like you said, you get the actuals and then you can visually see what the impact is from either lower, or I say lowering because it's usually lowering your ROAS, but really raising your bids or raising your budget. So I think that's cool because a lot of times you might say, like, I don't know, what would you think if everything is performing well? I think it's helpful to, and I would like your thoughts on this. If you're like, hey, I'm going to not really consider something like the potential clicks from higher bids, but I might consider something with budget,
Yeah.
where it's where I can kind of get the same performance back
Mm-hmm.
instead of having performance suffer a little bit for volume.
Yeah, you definitely have to keep in mind what your client's goals are, or even those break-even ROAS if you know those at the top of your mind, right? Because Google's always going to recommend or not take into consideration what those business goals are with those recommendations. So, for example, if you receive a recommendation to lower your target, but that target happens to be lower than that break-even ROAS, well, now you're losing efficiency, and that's something that your client most likely is not comfortable with, right? So in that case, you probably want to think about scaling up that budget rather than lowering that target. So you definitely have to layer in your strategic thinking. I think we all know here we're not going to follow Google blindly. You shouldn't follow Google's recommendations blindly, but that's definitely something to consider. So I do agree with you there.
Okay. And then just from the sort of more technical side of things with this report, you find it in the labs section.
Yeah. So it's under tools and settings. All the way at the bottom, you'll have a lab tab, and that's typically where Google is teasing out some of its newer betas. A client account that I found this in is we are in a very, I guess they say, exclusive partner program with Google Ads. We have it's one of their growth programs with Google Ads reps. So They keep us top of mind when it comes to betas, so we typically get our hands on things right away as they roll out. So we got a little lucky with this one, but I did find it pop up in one of my other accounts the day later. So I don't know what the selection is for this report, but based on some of the chatter on LinkedIn, I'm not the only one. So it's rolling out.
Cool. And you really went kind of like deep on this report in your LinkedIn post when you had shared this. And when you get this report, it seems like you get a 9-day time frame.
That was actually incorrect. So that was my fault. I took another look at that and wasn't paying attention to the date range. We are not in the year of our Lord 2024 anymore. We're in 2025.
Oh, yeah.
So it was actually, it went back to September 2024, which I missed initially. And then it's through the current month, October. So that's actually even more helpful because going into Black Friday, Cyber Monday planning this year, we now have that data to leverage back in Q4 of last year. So I think that will be really helpful to leverage as we're going through and budget planning and setting our goals for this year. What's interesting though is there isn't a date selector, like I said, so we can't change that time frame. We can't go back further than September of last year. And I don't know what that's going to look like as we progress forward, if that date will like inch up. So looking back when we are in November, let's say of this year, are we going to then look back in October of last year? Are we going to then lose all of September? So I do think we definitely have to pay attention to that because I want to obviously see our performance in that report come December, January of this year, looking back on Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So a date selector would be really nice in the near future.
But so I guess that's something that, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Cyber 6, all those things are upon us. Mm-hmm. This is something we can use like today, looking at last year, seeing where, especially to your point, where we can get more volume at the same efficiency by looking back at those 2024 numbers, correct?
Correct. The only thing that isn't as helpful is we can't look at that data at the campaign level. We can only look at it at the account level. So that's a little hard, right? If we're looking at November 23rd last year, November 24th last year, we can see that we missed out on opportunity based on budget and bids, but we can't see exactly what campaigns are being impacted. The recommendations that we're getting are based on our current performance. So it's not that helpful in that sense, but I do think it at least gives us an idea. We could look back and see what we spent that day last year and then see how much did we miss out on. So you could at least layer it in that way.
That's awesome. That's great, actually.
Better than nothing.
No, we'll take anything we can get. And then I know that you and I had a client last year that really, again, we're in a different program and all that, but we were getting almost daily during Black Friday, Cyber Monday week, just all holiday season, something that was really similar to this, right? But it was internal tools. So does this look like kind of similar to you to what we were, what Google has probably been sharing with many advertisers from their internal side?
Yeah, I think if you do work with any sort of Google wrap on the e-com side, you've probably seen a similar report to this before. They tend to send it out during high sale periods. During Black Friday, Cyber Monday, you'll get those daily emails saying, hey, you're missing out on this opportunity. Make sure you raise your budgets or lower your targets. And typically it's branded campaigns. But yeah, it looks very similar to this. So I think it is interesting to see Google sharing some of kind of what almost looks like their internal reports with advertisers.
Yeah, and I know we were talking about this morning, and I think it makes sense just in conjunction with this in the conversation and Black Friday, Cyber Monday. But it really seems like knowing your rep is important.
Yeah, I think for a long time, I was almost kind of like anti-Google rep help for so long. And to be fair, the select few that I've worked with weren't exactly that helpful. But I would say over the past year, I've really seen a difference in some of the support I've been getting. And a few of my accounts have been picked up for those specific like growth. I think it's like the growth support team. I believe it's called, but there's different levels to Google Ads rep support. So I typically try to lean into any extra help I can get, even if it ends up not being something I can leverage my account. I'm all about digging through the weeds, trying to get all of the information possible, and then seeing what's actually useful for my account. So sometimes even if you don't have a super reliable rep, hearing what they have to say that at least could give you something that's worth leveraging. You just don't know until you try. But when you do have a really great rep, you 100% have to use that to your advantage. Going into Black Friday, Cyber Monday this year, I'm working with a select few that are really making my life a little bit easier, and the insights that they're sharing with me. We've been meeting weekly, coming up with game plans for how we're going to handle the sale this year. They've been giving me insights from their internal reporting that I do not have access to, that I can leverage into planning for this year, looking back on last year's performance. And then they even asked me last meeting, going into Black Friday, Cyber Monday this year, what communication do you prefer? And we're going to have to send you those daily emails, but what's most important to you? And I shared with them, the rep that we worked with last year, how they would basically like text our client and say, hey, you're missing out on this opportunity. You need to raise your budgets. It was crazy. It was chaos. I've never seen anything like that before. And he was actually pretty shocked at that as well. And I essentially explained to him, look, I know that you have to communicate with us that day. I prefer you to keep that between us. I don't think you need to loop our client into that communication. And our main goal for this period is driving non-brand revenue. So if you are emailing me about raising budgets on branded, lowering targets on branded, I'm going to straight up ignore it. That is not a priority for my client. There is not high competition bidding on their name currently. So I'm not really going to worry about branded campaigns during this period. They're on, we have coverage. That's what I care about most. I want to focus on non-brand revenue. And he said, heard, I will make that a priority of mine as well in that communication. So I think just having those conversations, meeting with them regularly, looping them into what your plans are. I took them through our budget allocation for the week. They had some ideas and things that benefited me. So again, just having a good rep does matter. And I think just trying to get your hands on any information you can.
Yeah. So sort of like assessing the quality of your rep now, obviously, and you should be doing that anyway. And most people that are listening to the show probably are, but it also sounds like letting your client know candidly, like, saying like, we're going to get these things about all this missed opportunity by raising our budgets. We aren't going to be taking that path. So communicating with the client as well is something you'd recommend?
Oh, 100%. Always looping your client and I like to be as transparent as possible with our clients. Anything we're doing, I like to make sure that they're aware, they're okay with it, aligned with their goals. Their goals are my goals.
Yeah. But I do think like the stigma of saying like, hey, Google is contacting me directly from at Google email address saying that I'm missing out on revenue and all I need to do is to I just turn on our Google Nest thing or whatever that is. They're listening.
They're listening.
But I do think it's like good to let them know, like, hey, we're going to get some of this stuff. We're looking at efficiency, but there will be some opportunities maybe to raise budget. So like, let's be ready to pull the trigger if we think we're seeing more there and you can get more. So love that.
Yeah, I think going in, having a solid plan in place is a must, making sure everybody is aligned on the goal. And I think even having a little bit of cushion there in terms of budget is helpful too, to capitalize on that demand if it presents itself, because that Google rep is going to be emailing you. But if you're aligned on that strategy and they're emailing you about a couple non-branded campaigns that has an influx in demand and there's opportunity there to spend more to get more in return, you want to make sure you can capture that demand. So having a little bit of that budget cushion there is helpful. Then we can leverage this type of reporting to see what demand we maybe missed out on last year that we can prepare for.
Amazing. Maggie, one of the best in the game, the only person I trust to run my e-com campaigns. Thank you so much for taking the time to jump on today. I know you're going to be buried into your monitor screens for the next few months with the holiday season here. So thank you so much.
Most wonderful time of the year. Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye.
Bye.